Okay, great. I think we can give another minute for people to connect. I see we already have 97 attendees. That's great, and the number is growing. Let's give a couple of minutes to people. So we have 100 already in. This is a great milestone. This is a great number. So let me start and welcome you all into this event. We are SmartAgriHubs. We are the project with the ambition to connect the dots in the European agri-food system with respect to digital transformation. And now we are into tough times. And I think connecting the dots in tough times becomes even more important, because the faster we connect the dots, the better we will manage to respond to this crisis and to recover and restart our economy later on. Before going to present what we're going to discuss today, I would like to give a big thank you to all of you for attending. We know your time is very valuable. And also, I would like to give a big thanks to the team that organized this event, starting with the team of Sutelar and Partners, Lorena, and a very skillful team of people she has around, but also ZLTO, Peter Paré and his team, who really supported from the conceptualization up to the implementation of this event. Today, we have quite an interesting agenda, in the sense that despite the tough times, we remain faithful to our tradition to connect the dots of the ecosystem. Therefore, we would like to introduce a few viewpoints from different actors of our ecosystem. Of course, we will have the viewpoint of our project. Certainly, then we will have a panel discussion, and our aim here is to bring farmers, to bring representatives of cooperatives, to bring our advisors, the people who are the agronomists and the people who are helping the farmers in their daily life, but also our sector of agricultural machinery, and of course the voice of the startup entrepreneurs, the agri-tech entrepreneurs, and the voice of the digital innovation hubs. Last but not least, we are quite ambitious, because today, literally, we would like to connect a European a farmer on site from his farm with the European Parliament. So hopefully we will manage to bring also the member of European Parliament, Petros Kokkalis. We have the honor to host him today, so that he will give us the viewpoint of the European Parliament and what our representatives are working towards the recovery of the agri-food system in Europe. This is an experimental type of event, and we tried a lot to make sure that it will be smooth and it will be beneficial for all of you. So, in that sense, I would like to suggest a few, let's call it savoir-vivre conditions. Mainly, it's all the mics will be muted, but we want your voice to be strong. So we are asking you, please use the chat box, pose your questions. Some of the questions we will try to ask and discuss with our panelists during the telco, during the webinar, but some of them will be posted to our innovation portal in the forum, so people can go and answer and continue the discussion over there. The meeting will be recorded. And also at the end of the meeting, you will receive from the organizers a presentation and a list of participants. And you will also like to kindly ask you to use social media. If you use social media, I know many of you are doing it. Please post with the hashtag of SAG webinar, SmartAgriHubs webinar. Then I would first start with Dr. George Pierce, the coordinator of SmartAgriHubs, our George. And George, one thing that we know very well is that in business downturns, fast and bold adjustments in the changing circumstances are required. let's see how our project got into adjusting to the requirements and what are our plans as an ecosystem facilitator with respect to changes in the project. So, George, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Grigorous. Yeah, it's good to have the opportunity to spend some words on SmartAgriHubs and how we ended up in this webinar. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, Agri-Food is facing serious challenges today, and digitization will be one of the weapons in this fight. And I'm sure this webinar will go into that more deeply. I'm also sure that in the coming weeks and the coming months, there will be popping up a lot of, let's say, bright minds with great solutions at different places in Europe. How to great solutions to tackle and to mitigate the COVID crisis. They will pop up at different places, but we need to be aware that the fight is all over Europe, basically all over the world, of course, but the fight is all over Europe, and solutions can only be implemented effectively at local level. And this is exactly what SmartAgriHubs is designed for, transferring bright solutions from competence centers to the regions and to the local communities around the digital innovation hubs. So this is why I think the SmartAgriHubs network of digital innovation hubs and competence centers need to be activated to contribute to the COVID fight in agri-food and by agri-food. When we addressed this in the SmartAgriHubs team, we felt we can contribute to the COVID fight. We have ideas, we have the network, and we have also some resources to do that. And if you can, there is a moral obligation in my perspective that you should do that. You have to do that. So we looked at our open call. I go straight to the point. We looked at our open call budget and we decided to allocate a substantial budget on the COVID crisis. And as we speak, we are working hard on a series of open calls to activate the SmartAgriHubs network, to come up with bright ideas and to transfer the ideas to the places where we can apply them. And we expect to launch the first open calls in the coming weeks. We don't have specific dates for that yet. We are doing some fine-tuning, but on the basic ideas, we have the green light from the Commission, and we will launch them in the coming 2-3 weeks, at least in May. So I want to ask all of you to keep track of the SmartAgriHubs communication channels, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. Okay, thank you, Grigorous.
Thank you very much, George. Before going to the next stages of the panel, there is a small question and a small remark that I would like to make. When we were designing the project, you possibly remember, George, that we were designing our network of digital innovation hubs as the one-stop shops that people will come to get solutions, access to big networks, and so on and so forth. I actually used very often the example of the supermarket, the place where you can find everything that the European innovators are producing in one space. Do you think that now, in those days, we should look our project as a first aid station? Do we look at our project as a place, at the digital innovation hubs, as the places where people from the ecosystem, either farmers or agtech entrepreneurs or investors, should come to get solutions with respect to the challenges? And of course, the open call is a very important aspect, but our network is also about exchanging knowledge. Therefore, I would like to ask, what is our vision about that? How can we more effectively exchange knowledge in the course of our network during these tough times.
Thank you for completing the story, Grigas. Yes, it's a two-way communication. So of course the digital innovation hubs are the one-stop shop for farmers that are facing challenges, and they can go to the hubs for getting support. And on the other hand, there will be solutions available somewhere in Europe, and for that, let's say, transfer the communication between the two to link the demand to the supply and the supply to the demand. We have the innovation portal as an important instrument. There will be the knowledge, the contact person, not only the let's say the formal knowledge, but also the contact persons and the institutes that are providing solutions and help for the people at local level. So it's a two-way communication, and the most important instrument to facilitate this communication will be the SmartAgriHubs innovation portal. That's our vision on this.
Perfect. Thank you very much, George. Before going to the next session, I would like to remind you that we have a chat box, so feel free to ask any questions. As we said, the microphones of the participants might be muted for technical reasons, but we want their voice to be strong and loud. So please use the chat box, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. Now, speaking about bridging the supply and demand, I would like to give the floor to one good colleague and friend of mine, Peter Paré from ZLTO, who has been working on that even when we had better times to tackle with. But now that the going gets tough, I think that the voice of the farmers in understanding the needs and understanding how to connect it with the possibilities that the technology can offer becomes even more important. And so Peter has been working together with many of us in a team to prepare and launch the discussion. And I would like to ask him to present, first of all, the findings that we already have by now, and also, as he usually does, to invite us for more action. Peter, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Goris. We had only a few weeks ago, 1.5 weeks, we had the first step to do something. And what could we do? What to use the things that George already talked about in a minute ago. We could use the forum, and we could use the tools that we have now. Before I show what came in it in the forum, I would like to show you the question that I asked afterwards. So the next slide contains this question. And then the question comes for the poll. The next slide. I will ask you, to which extent have we described the COVID challenges in Agri&Food in the forum now? And the reason why I ask is it's open. It keeps on giving you the possibility to continue with new challenges and new solutions. Let's get to the challenges in the content then. What we see is challenges about the meetings, the digital meetings and the farm meetings, where Koshika will come back to it later in this session. Labor, we see labor was introduced from Belgium, Netherlands, UK, France, Italy, the Balearic Islands. So it's an issue that plays on many locations, and that is something which, by bringing information together, will help a lot. Trouble finding is related to the supply is really a big issue. The supply chain visibility and the supply chain organization. With special emphasis, as you see, to short supply chain. Then the digitization and the interaction with farmers. And then the next slide, you see that so not only put forward in this forum, but also the organizations that combine the efforts of different advisory services. They already make a point of it, and they made an official letter that legislation could promote more. In some regions it restricts, of course, with obvious reasons that you should bilateral contact, physical contact is better, but that's one thing. Other regions could promote it, and in this time we see a good reason to do it. Organizations could be more offensive on this level, and farmers would accept, and we see they now accept more digital advice. They appreciate it very much, and they see that it's very practical, and that it gives a lot of information in a short period. Next slide is the poll. Let's hope the poll works. You can please fill in your poll. And to which extent you think we, with these challenges we mentioned, did we partially, did we mostly, or did we completely match all challenges somewhere? Please, I see one person answer to the poll now, and I give time to you until we reach, let's say, 60, half of the people. 127 are now in it. If people, maybe it is good if the organizers tell how to use the poll, because only one response, I think.
We hope that it's possible that you just click on one of the attendees. You just click on one of these choices, and it works. It doesn't work for us organizers, but I hope it works for and we do have results.
Now I see results. It comes up. Great. For 50% vote. It's going fast, so I wait a minute. And 53, okay, maybe we show the result of the poll. 30% said partially. If you open the poll screen, I think you get also the result. 45% said most, but not all. 90% said all challenges are described, and now 59% have voted. I think that is already reasonable an overview of the challenges. Now let's get further to the solutions mentioned on the forum. Solutions are heartwarming sometimes and very interesting. You see that, the next, yes, that the farmers gave access to their livestock data. That's an interesting thing, to exchange information on labor, to find solutions for find local products, find solutions for keep the home delivery and keep the delivery in the supermarkets on level, so that we don't have empty shelves. And it works extremely well. The transport works well, and so I think we have already very interesting ideas, but the forum stays open, so let's continue on that. Next slide is to put the solutions in a perspective. Solutions and challenges, they are interrelated. If you look, for example, to the dairy sector, we are happy the cows produce, and the transport of it is still organized perfectly. The transport over Europe also, but on the world level, we see it's a world market. We see that it is reorganizing itself, and if there is changes, then we have the risk that people come in our place and not the best quality, and so that we want to deliver is chosen, and we lose a market. So challenge is to keep the market with good information. So a lot of information about our top products from you is interesting. The other thing, the interrelation is, of course, when you want to have milk production, you have calves. The calves are going to specialist farmers who breed the top quality calf meat, which is eaten in restaurants in Italy, and there you see the problem. The restaurants are closed, so we have calf meat, which is top quality, but people are not used to buy it in the shops, and it has to be reorganized completely. As long as that is not possible, we see that the dairy could also get a problem with this. So we have to solve this kind of solutions also, and on a large scale. One of the persons who has experience in that, next slide, is Jacob van der Borne. Jacob is a potato farmer in Netherlands, and he faces these problems. Maybe Jacob, I'm not sure if he has his camera available, but he can open. Maybe he can join in the meeting now.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you, Jacob.
But no picture?
No, we can. No, it seems telephone connection does not allow that. But
okay.
We take the next slide, then we can see you on the slide, and
okay.
on your preferred place, and that's in your with many screens in front of you. Maybe you introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Jacob van der Borne. I'm a potato farmer on the border between the Netherlands and Belgium. We grow mainly French fry potatoes, around 500 hectares. And we're doing a lot of precision farming stuff. So everything that you can think of in precision farming, we're actually applying that on our farm.
If you look to this, then we see what you are doing now. Next slide, please. Then we see at this time you are planting the potatoes, and at the same time you could be taking the potatoes out of the storage.
Yeah, usually our delivering season ends end of April, and then our planting season also starts in the beginning of April. So we have a small overlap in delivering potatoes and planting for the new harvest.
In this period, you face challenges, and your colleagues face challenges. Tell us about it.
Yeah, particularly this year, we see that the demand for potatoes for the production of French fries is completely collapsed through the COVID area. All restaurants are closed, so there is no.
Hey, Jacob drops away.
I'm there.
Okay.
I'm still there or not?
Yes, you are back.
Okay, so what we see is that the demand for French fries, potatoes to make French fries is completely gone, and a lot of my colleagues are left over with a stock of potatoes without any value anymore. Luckily, I was able to deliver all the potatoes before the COVID started, so I'm quite lucky that I delivered all my potatoes.
That's the challenge for this year. It's solved somewhat by government regulation, government support, but you already faced problems or not? You uncertainty for next year.
Yeah, my biggest risk now is that we're planting. We are planting the new season, but we're still not sure if the COVID and if the restaurants are still or will be open again, and if the demand of potatoes at that point is there. So the chances are that all the leftover stocks that were not processed in this year will be transferred to next year, and then with a good harvest for next year, the prices will be very low, and that's some of the risks that we cannot foresee. That's our biggest issue for how will the market develop after the COVID area.
How do you mitigate that anyway?
Yeah, the only thing that we can do is try to we actually canceled all the early varieties, because we already know that some of the harvest of this year will be transferred to the production of next year. So there won't be a demand in the early season for potatoes, because they just going to use the old harvest. And then we just shrink our acreage. So we usually plant between 500 and 550 hectares, and now we will end up around the 500. So we just decrease the amount of potatoes that we're planting.
You told about you try to work on quality.
Yeah, of course. The other side that we're also we're trying to make our product, our potatoes, more likely for the end customer. So we do a lot of high tech. We try to do a lot of extra services around our potatoes, the delivering of our potatoes, and hopefully that will give us hopefully our customers will like not only our product but also the service and the quality that we deliver with it. So that would be a chance to be able to get to sell my potatoes before, or to make my potatoes more desirable for the end customer.
So precision makes more market.
Yeah, that's the idea. Precision will not only save money in inputs, but it will also make a new market when customers are willing to pay extra for that.
And how do you work with your advisors?
Yeah, the advisors are still coming on my farm, but they keep their distance. So we just send them which fields that they need to check, and at the end of the day, they will come to one of the fields, discuss with social distance, discuss what they saw, and then make the advisory like we used to do, but then in the office or very close on.
Okay, so you continue and on a high technical level together.
Yeah, that's what we also see. In the past, everybody thought we have to travel a lot, but now with the COVID, we see that the digital web binner like this one, or like I have a lot, will also work. So I think also after COVID, the world will be changed or has been changed in more digital binners and digital conversations. So I think in any way it will have an environmental impact, the whole COVID thing.
Thank you, David. I don't know if there were questions I asked to Grigoris. If there are questions, if not.
We do have a few questions. There is one very interesting one that I would like also to pose, since we have Jakob on board. How do you convince your customers to pay more? How do you convince your customers to follow you in this strategy of increasing the quality?
And it's the problem with that is that you can convince them, but nobody wants to pay. So they want to have better quality, they want to have better traceability, they want to have all the extra, but they won't pay extra for it. So we really have to make a special product or a special market to be able to do that. So to try that out, I made my own French fry, just to trigger the big factories that it can be done, that extra value with data is really appreciated by the end customer. And we now slowly see that also the big companies like FarmFritz, like Lamb Weston Meijer, are now interested in that marketing model, and also doing some small trials with a few hectares on CO2 neutral French fries, and also on more durability in the French fry production. So it's a slow process, but by showing them that it can be done, this market will open, I think.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Then we go from one farmer to all the European farmers. Next slide is to give the word to Manuel Delgado. Manuel is, I think he has a video connection. So Manuel, could you come in? Then I could close my video. I give the word to Manuel.
Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. So, well, first of all, thank you very much for organizing this webinar, which I think is quite accurate and quite needed in this moment. I'll try to be brief with the challenges and the solutions afterwards that are from the farmers and cooperatives point of view we have been observing for the agri-foods sector during these difficult times. And afterwards, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. So first of all, our main intention during the COVID-19 crisis was to ensure the flow and dynamism of the internal market. We perceived a problem regarding labor shortages because there was a lack of workers, intra-EU seasonal workers and non-EU seasonal workers that normally go, let's say, for example, to Spain, to Italy, to Finland, to harvest the different products like berries, for example, in the south of Spain. And that lack of workers really hampered the dynamic of the food supply chain afterwards, and that caused as well a little surplus in the prices and a little bit of speculation during some weeks for some products. So we faced both, let's say, employment problem and also a more technical related to each sector problem regarding the prices and the availability of foods. So that being like a general panoramic of the problems, some solution that we pushed for at the European level was basically to encourage the European Commission to not only publish the guidelines on the free movement of workers across the European Union, but also to recognize agricultural workers, not only seasonal workers, but also skilled workers that also may be needed, and owners as key workers, so they can freely move across the European Union to cross different borders, because we found that some borders were closed, and even though some others were open, if some workers need to cross by, let's say, Czech Republic to go to Austria, then they face the problem of not being able to reach the destination country, even though the destination country may be willing to accept new workers. So the European Commission published two different guidelines, one of them regarding the exercise of free movement for workers, and we saw that seasonal workers were accepted as key workers. So that was like a big let's say momentum for our sector, but not all agricultural workers were recognized. So we were pushing for that recognition first, and then we were also pushing for the common implementation of those guidelines, because as you may guess, these guidelines were voluntary, and also it was not only that a country had to implement them for the good result of the sector, but also that if the implementation was done in different ways, then we found that in Finland, for example, the forestry sector was not in Sweden, sorry, was not recognized as an agricultural sector. So even though seasonal workers were able to enter Sweden for agricultural purposes, then in the end not for forestry, and so on. So some disruptions within the different sectors were found, and in the end, having a common approach with these guidelines, and also for sure respecting the healthy and at work provisions by the EU OSHA agency, were fundamental for not only keeping when possible the dynamism of the farmers' activities, but also having a European approach towards this crisis that we we have seen is common for all of us, irrespectively of the place of work and the country where we come from.
Very clear challenge. Manuel, do you have ideas? ICT, I could imagine ICT could help to give the right information. Do you have ideas on that?
Yes, at least that's a good point. Thank you for raising it. We have been able to, thanks to technology, organize more online meetings with our members. So even though it was a difficult time for workers to move across the European Union, we were able to daily update on the challenges from our farmers. So we were in contact with them every day. So thanks to technology, we have been able at least to monitor all the challenges and to communicate them to European Commission, to the Commissioner Smith, on a weekly basis. So at least that's something that we can learn from, that technology enables us to have a proper and more, let's say, daily basis communication approach towards our needs. And that is also something that should be kept regularly after the pandemic, because in the end we are able now to receive more input from our members, thanks, for example, to a jot form that we created, and it's updated and received weekly. So now we have data each week on the evolution of each sector and subsector within different countries that before we were not able to do so, because we had, let's say, more like monthly bulletins or things like that, but not just like a per week assessment on the issue.
Thank you. I cannot see the chat screen. Are there questions for Manuel?
We do have a couple of questions for the previous speaker, but we will summarize them later on in the chat box. I think we better move a little bit to maintain the agenda.
Right. Thank you, Manuel. And
Perfect.
then continue indeed to the next guest. And Tom Kelly could open his camera, I hope. And Tom Kelly is Director of Knowledge Transfer at Teagasc. He is at the same time coordinator of the FAIRshare project. Next slide shows in the FAIRshare project what we did with regards to the COVID crisis. Tom Kelly's camera wants to present, but it seems it is black. I would say, Tom, can you speak? I cannot hear Tom now. Maybe he.
Hello, hello, Peter.
Yeah, Tom, you can speak. Could you click on the camera button? Oh no, you have clicked on the camera button because it wants to, but it seems there will be the private sticker on top of it. Or if you can just speak, that's also fine. And on the next sheet, we see the FAIRshare project approach. But Tom Kelly is both. Tom Kelly, maybe you introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Tom Kelly. I work with Teagasc in Ireland. I am the head of the Advisory and Education Service, and we are also coordinators, Teagasc, of the FAIRshare project. And thanks very much for the invitation, and certainly we are very keen to participate in digital projects and certainly supporters of the SmartAgriHubs. So within the FAIRshare project, we have one major part of our activity is the creation of an inventory of digital tools. And I suppose we were very fortunate in talking to advisors and talking to farmers that we needed to keep this a broad inventory and not just concentrate on I suppose, technologies, Internet of Things, and other big data and other issues, we kept the inventory quite open. And a major section in that inventory is around communication tools that advisors use, and digital communication tools. So within the project, we've been collecting these since the middle of January, and there are 107 tools in total. And I think there are at least 15 or 20 of those at this stage that could be categorized as communications aids. And these tools, I suppose, have been used quite limited by advisors, because the predominant way advisors work is in one-to-one with farm visits and one-to-one consultations with our clients, with farmers. And the tools that since the lockdown and since the COVID for the last 6 weeks, these tools have been used more and more, and new tools advisors are telling us about new tools which they are using. And we've created an inventory with these, and you can see on the screen 5 tools which have been, as we've put up there, to help us to do this. So look at these. These are common tools that have been there for some time. They help, just like this, with communications, meetings, etc. But also some of them are old tools that have been used for some time, like SMS messaging. And we are always surprised at the response we get in Teagasc to SMS messages, which go out to farmers on a regular basis. And they are very limited, of course, but some of the other technologies are not as limited, and certainly are much more in use now during the COVID situation. So within my own organization, even simple things like podcasts and this, which we would have been doing on an infrequent basis, maybe once a month or once every few weeks, we have increased the rate of these to once a week. And this is greatly appreciated by the farmer audience. So we are not able to hold any big events like seminars or farm walks or discussion group meetings on farms, but we found workaround solutions using webinars, online technologies, etc., and also using the kind of digital tools around radio and YouTube videos, etc. So there's a lot of activity, and what really surprises me is the degree to which advisors have adopted these and have found a solution to be able to produce really good quality videos from their own kitchen or their own sitting room, and keep the communications open with the farmers. So Peter, that's an overview. So if you have any follow-on questions.
I think that's completely clear, and people see the link that they can look further for information. And I just got the message we need to hurry up a bit. So I think there is, I don't want to ask the question if there is something in the chat. And we continue for the next speaker. Thank you very much, Tom. And Grigor is willing
to Peter.
Thank you very much. I think we got a couple of very interesting insights so far. And of course, the questions that are posed here, we keep them. And some of them we will possibly ask them during the discussion, but some of them we will also put them in our website, in our portal, innovation portal. One important thing that we have to take into account at this point is that our sector does not only consist of the farmers and the consumers and the intermediaries, but it's also the people who are providing the technologies. And we have today Jerome Bandry from CIMA. It's the Pan-European Association, collective organization of the agricultural manufacturers, the people who are producing agricultural machinery. And I believe that thanks to automation, Jerome, you will agree with me, thanks to the machines that your sector is producing, our food systems have been quite resilient, so we avoided the humanitarian crisis. But at the same time, I know that your sector is facing huge challenges. You have bottlenecks in spare parts, in your supply chain, and also you are worrying about the farmers' income and their capacity to invest in the future. So I would like to give you the floor to give us the insight of the sector.
Thank you. Well, I hope you can hear me okay and see me okay, because I'm using two connections. If you want to move to the next slide, maybe just a word of introduction of SEMA. I'm the Secretary General for this association, which is basically the voice of the agricultural machinery manufacturers in Europe. This is an industry that represents about 150,000 employees. You can double those numbers if you take into account the distribution channels and the maintenance channels of the equipment in Europe. It's an industry producing a worth of about 40 billion euro in Europe for a market of 28 billion euros. So we are highly connected to the global markets. A lot of the equipment that is used in the rest of the world will be produced in Europe and vice versa. Our goal is obviously as an industry association to bring this expertise and experience so that we can shape legislation that is supportive of advanced agricultural machinery and solutions, which is the way forward for sustainable farming. And you've mentioned digital farming, smart technologies, precision farming, all those things happen through machinery. The unique feature we bring in as SEMA is this interconnection between the industry we represent and the institutions at European level, but also other stakeholders that participate in this debate. And this is why we are engaged in initiatives like SmartAgriHubs or FAIRshare and others, just to be able to make that connection and dissemination and facilitation of all the challenges and opportunities that we face. So this is us. If you move to the next slide, when something like COVID-19 happens, how will it impact an activity like ours? Well, I basically identified four topics here. And the first one, either because we run an association, so we have to be accountable for that association, but also as an industry, the first thing that would come as a challenge is the protection of the health and safety of our employees. How can we still continue to operate with our employees, our customers, our stakeholders when something like this hits? And of course, we're an association like SEMA. It's a small secretariat. We're 6 people. We have to find new ways of working. So we're discovering the beauties of having virtual meetings from our home offices, being contained and things like this. But we have to keep up the activity, even interfacing with the Commission and other stakeholders to have this exchange. But we also have to make sure that our manufacturers, the producers, the ones with facilities, can continue to operate. And that, of course, will only happen once all the protection rules have been put in place. We know about social distancing, personal protective equipment, but there's a lot of adaptation that is needed in the facilities. So many, if not all of our producers had to go through some periods of shutdown just to get their facilities ready for whenever the opportunity to restart was going to come. One thing we did also as SEMA on the activity side is that we created a special group whereby the health and safety specialists of the different brands and corporates within our activity could get together to share the best practices and see how they would approach things like, how do you best put in place social distancing in an activity where you're going to actually build stuff. So protection of the employees and the stakeholders and the customers, the first thing. The second thing is, well, let me put it this way. It's amazing how fast we move from some type of agri-bashing into, oh, we need agriculture, because otherwise, if we don't need agriculture and if we don't have farmers, there's nothing in our shelves, in our shops. So analyzing this complex, critical, very integrated chain of stakeholders that make up this food supply chain in Europe was a fascinating moment, because Of course, if we go into shops and we still have stuff on the shelves, it's thanks to the hard work of the farmers, the distributors, and the people that sell the groceries. But you also see very quickly behind it is this, that if you don't have crop protection suppliers, if you don't have fertilizer suppliers, if you don't have seed suppliers, if you don't have agricultural machinery that can be produced, that can be delivered, that can be serviced, if you don't have components available or spare parts that get into this agricultural machinery, you're very quickly challenging your food supply chain. Agriculture is an activity that operates on the basis of seasons, and seasons can't really be postponed, as we heard from our previous speakers. So if we don't have this ability to maintain the production, shipping, distribution, rental, maintenance, servicing of the agricultural machinery, at a point, the farmer will have to stop its activity. And that's, of course, a critical issue. It's quite easy to explain, but you have also to understand that there you have a number of challenges in keeping an activity like ours open. So there was a lot of explanation needed in order to make sure that we could continue this activity, especially when it comes to the component supply chain. We have countries in Europe whereby until I think next Monday, you can still not legally produce in our activity. So it was a key moment for us as an industry to interact with authorities out there to understand and keep the production, shipping, maintenance of ag machinery as a critical element in the short list of sectors that needed to continue as an emergency continuity plan in Europe. So that was a key moment for us and is still going on, a lot of efforts here. Europe can also do a number of things to simplify and to avoid, shall I say, shooting ourselves in the foot. I don't want to get too technical on this call, but we have to be smart and agile. And I'll just pick up one example. We have machines that are built with what we call transition engines under the stage 5. Stage 5 is a new stage of engine emissions. Manufacturers could procure engines in 2019 for those machines with transition engines, which they did on the basis of normal conditions. Today, we don't have normal conditions because the machines we are supposed to build with very short deadlines now, up to June 2020 or June 2021 for some of them, are missing transmissions, axles, tires, cabs, electronics, all the things that we got in disruption. So if we don't want to have to scrap a number of engines that were procured in 2019 as part of normal conditions, we have to adapt a little bit the conditions that we have today for 2020 and 2021 when it comes to our own activity. It's a little bit the back office of being able to produce and procure equipment, but we have to identify with the authorities those simple solutions that need to be put in place because of existing deadlines and legislation that cannot be met anymore because of the special conditions with COVID, and we have good hopes that we'll get a solution for this. Last but not least, since we have to go fast, we also have to assess that this industry of about 40 billion euro and 150,000 employees in Europe, a lot of it is actually SMEs, small and medium enterprises, family-owned businesses that will just do some of the very highly focused, specialized machinery that Jakob was showing at the beginning. Potato harvester, you operate this machine maybe 10, 20 days during the season, but it better run when it has to run, right? And it's very technical, and a lot of SMEs actually produce those type of equipment. These SMEs, not just the potato harvesters, but the whole chain is actually going through some severe challenges with the crisis because the facilities can't run completely because the components are not there, and just simply because sometimes the solvency issues will come. So at a point when the emergency crisis on how do we contribute and continue to have the continuity of the food chain in Europe is over, we will also have to assess what can be done to further support this industry and make sure that the hits linked to COVID-19 can be facilitated. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Rob. Actually, we tackled one of the questions with respect to the health and how important health becomes in the agricultural machinery in the entire sector. I believe that it's good to move on a little bit and to keep some questions to initiate a discussion at a later stage. I would like to give in a couple of minutes the floor to Christina, because Christina, thank you very much for being with us. Christina is a tech entrepreneur coming from Lithuania. And apart from having a surname that is equally difficult to pronounce as mine, which makes me feel better, it's also that, Christina, you are, as an entrepreneur, you have to constantly juggle between optimism that and being a dreamer, that things can go better, and realism, that when the situation is difficult, you have to cope with that. So how is the sector, how is the agtech community, the innovators in agriculture are coping, particularly in your part of Europe, in the Baltics? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for having me today. And I'm representing Digital Innovation Hub, Agri&Food Lithuania. We're located in Baltic states. And if I have the next slide, I'll try to argue one sentence today. For this time, I've heard many times, what are you doing right now as a agtech company? Nobody needs your fancy technologies no more. So how are you going to be coping with that? I will try to argue that it's an opposite situation right now, and the technologies and the smart solutions are needed even more than it was needed before. Agri-food in total is one of the more resistant sectors, and doesn't matter what goes wrong, but still ag-food tech would be on the demand and will be attractive investment field. Anyhow, it still faces huge challenges. First of all, everybody went on survival mode. It's the biggest priority for our end users, that's farmers who are implementing the smart solutions. And on the other hand, the agtech companies that we work with, the technology providers, they are also facing big challenges as the implementation and adoption processes are becoming longer, especially research and development processes are getting slower and smaller in scale due to the cuts. So we are talking right now, what's very important, that all the startups or agtech companies should also be concentrating on business models, or how to sell or how to provide a bigger value for the end user. Basically what we're talking that we need to look back and go back to the basics. It's a shifting phase from the luxury technologies to probably basic technologies, the technologies that can be used every day. And we must shift and show our consumers that it can bring bigger value, and also for their consumers should that for the farmers it could bring more effectiveness. Also, what is very important, that the disruption of the food supply chain and changing consumer behavior also brought many changes. I should also say that it's not only for the food supply chain disruption, but for the full agricultural supply chain. As companies are adopting social distancing policies, such mode of the work, it brings significant impact on the whole food supply chain and on the full agricultural supply chain. We are talking from the packaging to the processing, and we are talking even about the farmers, how they can access, for example, seeds, fertilizers, or crop protection tools, which are very crucial for the growing healthy crops. So pandemic, what it's doing, it's accelerating a move towards more localized production. It's more than ever that supply chains need to localize. globalization is challenged, and our next steps, that's changing consumer behavior impacts new trends. That's what farmers are noticing, and in that way, agtech companies should adapt and provide solutions that could help farmers. So for the next slide, so by the end of the day, we are all getting more digitalized. Using data and analytics with the help of artificial intelligence should be the first thing in the helping farmers to be more efficient. Such things as robotics, with the going down labor numbers, or food e-commerce, that's one of the important things which are coming to the market, and localized food production, for example, including indoor agriculture, food as a medicine, and etc. Those things cannot be created, or those things cannot survive without the agricultural technologies. So we should concentrate on bringing more value and bigger efficiency for the farmers to help them also to deal with their challenges. So, and investors, even though they see the behavior changing, they're bringing the message that they're still interested in investing for the ag technologies. And for my last word, if we can see the last slide, I want to say that every challenge has a positive outcome. And I strongly believe that as a community, we can achieve that and we can find the right solutions. I would like to tell a very short story. Very soon you'll see a short video where there is a farm of horses, and horses have been living on the farm for 10 years or so. And 3 months ago, they got a new resident, a donkey Art, who came as an inventor in the farm. And let's see what happened. The video is being stuck a little bit, but maybe it will go through. Okay. There we go. So for 10 years on the farm, horses never ever managed to go out of the gate by themselves. And right now on the farm, there are 20 horses, which 10 of them, including inventor Donkey Art, they know how to open the door. So the inventor taught them. So I just wish that we as a community also teach each other, and this is the best time to use digital technologies and bring more value and efficiency to our whole agricultural chain. Thank you.
Amazing, Christina. Thank you very much, and thank you for showing us how the donkey used technology, in fact, and how he teaches his other fellows to use technology. Now, Annalyn, we said before that nowadays our digital innovation hubs work more like first aid stations. Let me introduce Annalyn, works in Ilvo. Flanders Digital Innovation Hub is an integral part of the SmartAgriHubs community, and also a very active one. And she's representing a very active ecosystem. So, Annalyn, I would like to give the floor to you to tell us a little bit, how is it going now? What is the service offering of a digital innovation hub in tough times, and what do you observe from the sector by talking to everybody on a daily basis?
Okay, hi, I'm Annalyn from Ilvo, and thank you to give me the opportunity to share some ideas and thoughts with you. I will first shortly explain the situation now in Belgium. So the main problem in the agricultural and horticultural sector is the lack of help and hands, as was mentioned several times already and was also mentioned on the forum. So it's literally hands for helping with planting, harvesting and sorting, for instance, in the auctions. Harvesting in our regions is mainly now for tomatoes, strawberries and asparagus. So several initiatives were created. For instance, we have a website, www.helpdeoogst.be. So on this website, employers can post their vacancies to quickly find new employees, and also people who are willing to help in the agricultural sector can post that on this website. This is an initiative of a Belgian horticultural association and also of two farmers associations, Algemeen Boerensyndicaat and Boerenbond. This last association, Boerenbond, also made another website, again to search for employees and to help farmers with insurance coverage. So then there are also a lot of other initiatives. So a lot of organizations listed those initiatives on their websites. We have, for instance, Agoria. Agoria is a Belgian employer organization, mainly for technology-inspired companies, and they listed several initiatives. Also, the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries in Flanders listed some initiatives on their website, also information about premiums for farmers and an emergency fund for the horticultural sector. So this information was given on their website. And then we have also our Flemish Minister of Economics. She launched also a website, and it's mainly to encourage and ask people to buy in local shops and support the short chain. So stores and restaurants can register on this website and gain visibility in their neighborhood. So to summarize, we think we should really help to solve this labor deficit, and maybe we can do that by helping and supporting those semi-professional websites and improving them. Maybe also smart algorithms can be added. We also believe that a platform should be created to summarize all those initiatives, and maybe this platform can be over the country borders. This was also mentioned before in this webinar. So it can be a platform within our entire SmartAgriHubs community, or even within the entire European Union community. Besides all those initiatives and the support for that, we also believe that we should focus on automatization, as also a long-term approach is requested to solve this pandemic issue and to be prepared for maybe a new problem that might arise. I also want to mention that in the region Northwest Europe, several initiatives are taken. This evening, there is also a webinar in Germany. You can normally find information about it on the forum of the innovation portal. And the lead of the Northwest European region will also be part of this webinar. We at ILVO, we are a competence center and also a digital innovation hub, and we try to help and support our clients, and we also, mainly our digital innovation hub is collecting information about new funding opportunities. So we are really happy with also the new funding opportunity of the SmartAgriHubs open call, because that's also important to support farmers and other SMEs in our region. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Annelien. At this point, I would like to welcome one of our representatives in the European Parliament. I would like to welcome the member of the European Parliament, Mr. Petros Kokkalis, who is not only very actively involved in the agri-food policy making at the European level, but he's also following the potential of digital technologies a lot. Mr. Kokkalis, it's an honor to have you with us. Thank you for your support. And we know that you have a very tight schedule. So I would like to directly pass the microphone to you, if possible, to bring us a little bit the actions of the European Parliament with respect to recovery of our sector.
Thank you very much, Grigoris. And sorry I couldn't be here for the whole conversation, but we are actually very busy in the Parliament, and we hold a lot of committee meetings. We're moving forward the files, and this is very well done. So I will just briefly go on the measures that were taken directly as a response to the immediate health crisis, and then I would like to expound a little bit on the on the recovery and the resilience efforts that are going to follow as regards the agricultural sector. So the measures already taken, most of them on the 2nd of April and then some more on the 22nd, are of two kinds. They are either non-market measures or market measures. The non-market measures were one part, the biggest part was about ensuring an efficient food supply chain, which meant creating green lanes across the now closed borders to allow for food flowing across Europe. And that is not only food, it's also input requirements such as pesticides and so on. Then on the same vein, there was an exemption on movement of people to allow for seasonal workers who were qualified as critical workers to move across borders. This, of course, has raised the issue of equity and the importation of food labor for seasonal workers from poorer countries to more wealthy countries to pick up the harvest. So this was an issue, but it was exempted. Then a second pillar would be the measures which directly support farmers in the rural areas. So there was a flexibility in the use of financial instruments under the rural development, higher advances of payments, almost 70% for direct payments. And so farmers will start receiving these advances earlier. And also a loosening of the state aid regulation. Higher state aid is now possible for farmers and food processing companies, so that could be up to 120,000 per farmer. Then there was a lot of some measures on CAP simplification and flexibility. There was an extension of deadline for CAP payment applications, fewer farm on the spot checks, but which is not good in itself, but it's also, there was a strong suggestion by the Commission to encourage the use of new technology and the extended use of satellite images to check agricultural activity and also geotagging. There was relaxing and the possibility to amend rural development programs, for example, to use rural development programs to strengthen the health facilities, and also a postponement for the submission of annual reports for rural development programs. Now, in terms of the market measures, there was a private storage aid applicable to dairy, meat, and dairy and meat products. So the ability to temporarily withdraw from the market, a flexibility for market support programs on specifically on wine, fruits, vegetables, olive oil, and agriculture, and the EU school, and also derogation, an exception from EU competition rules on the milk, flour, and potato sectors for the next 6 months. Now, the big question now is, of course, and it's very relevant to the discussion on agriculture, is the recovery measures. Now, the biggest question now is the financing, which appears to be a common understanding that the investment for the restructuring of the economy would be mutualized. That means there would be some kind of bonds, Euro bonds, Corona bonds, or other bonds backed by the EU own budget, which means that the new multi-annual financial framework, which is to be discussed, will be the main vehicle for the reconstruction. And also the new fund, the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which is going to be founded in the near future. Now, the big discussion here is how do we make sure that the recovery and resilience building follows on and actually enhances the path of the Green Deal. this is a very important discussion for the future of the European economy and the kind of way we want to go forward. And there seems to be a general understanding that Europe is not going to stray from the growth policy of the Green Deal. So this means a lot for agriculture. During the crisis, we saw the strains put on the food system, and now the subject of reforming the already agreed CAP is very much on the table, with the expecting the farm to fork and the biodiversity strategy to come up with that. So I think that we're moving into a time where we're going to see a radically altered common agricultural policy, especially with regards to the resilience of the food system and let's say our exposure to the international food chains. We have to move towards shorter supply chains. We have to move towards less pesticides. We have to have a relocalization targets, and this actually dovetails quite well with the digital strategy, especially in the agricultural sector. So what I'm basically trying to say is that during the next few months or maybe weeks, this very urgent and very important discussion on the recovery strategy and the resilience strategy is going to see the common agricultural policy at its center, and we must look forward to a very deep reform of the common agricultural policy, and therefore of the farming sector. Now, it is, I think, probably shared by all of us in this webinar that in this new condition, we need to see the rapid deployment and the extension of digital tools and digital possibilities in the food sector. This is the time where we have to look at the full digitalization of agriculture, because it is clear that we need to reposition our supply chains and our production chains, and there is going to be a lot and very interesting where the genie is out of the box, and the next few months are going to be critical for the future of European food sector. Finally, we are also pushing forward the climate law, which means climate neutrality by 2050, and that has so much to do with the agricultural sector again. So I don't know if we are going to have some questions or how you want to proceed in that, but that is my report from.
Very much, Mr. Kokkalis. I actually have one question that I would like to start with you, and then I would like to give this question to a couple of more of attendees of our panelists. We hear a lot of people saying, "Don't waste, never waste a good crisis," and many people in this room, you mentioned the Green Deal, many people in this room and many people in our ecosystem see possibly the crisis as an opportunity to leave behind us old suboptimal processes and to go more sustainable, to go more green, and to go more inclusive. In that aspect, how do you see the innovation ecosystem of Europe, and how can the Parliament help to frame it towards this direction? We know that there are upcoming calls for Horizon 2020 about the Green Deal, but how do you see it happening in the future for us? And then after that, I would like to ask a couple of the panelists as well. So the floor again to you, Mr. Kokkalis.
Okay, thank you, Grigos. This is a very good quote, and I think it portrays a magnificent historic irony. This is a phrase used by Milton Friedman, and it was who is the father of the neoliberal economics, and it's very much the underpinning. It can also be translated as the shock doctrine, so where you never miss a good crisis, because that gives you the opportunity to push reforms in the sense of deregulation, in the sense of privatization, and the prevalence of so-called free markets. Now this has turned on its head because the crisis has highlighted glaring weaknesses and problems of the system. And given that there is going to be an unprecedented fiscal and monetary expansion driven by the government, and this falls at the same moment where we do have a plan, which is the Green Deal, is actually an opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity, and may very well be the last opportunity to try to construct a better world. I mean, this is something that was not to be said lightly a few months ago, but today or a week ago, we had the UN Secretary General expounding us, the UN Secretary General of the United Nations expounding us to build back better. So now everything is a little bit up for grabs, except from the Green Deal. And now the innovation sector is critical in this, because as you very well know, we do not have currently all the answers or all the technologies available, but we have to find them along the way. Therefore, I think that the restructuring of the Horizon programs in missions, one of them being soil and therefore food, is going to play a huge role. And one of the, for example, in the research, basic science comes from research which is funded by states which do not look forward towards monetization, as opposed to private research. So we had this problem with the pharmaceutical industry, and now we are going to have to see increased budgets on bad science, and also with the restructuring of the Horizon program into missions, we have to finally, after a couple of decades of doing fantastic research in Europe, to emphasize and put forward the ways to bring these innovative solutions to real life, into the real economy. And it's critical that we do that as Europe, because a lot will also depend on what will happen in the American elections, in the US elections in November. But hopefully, anyway, at this moment, Europe needs to lead the way towards a green recovery. And with a green recovery, it also means a democratic recovery. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but that's my thoughts on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Kokkalis. Thank you very much. I would like now to give the same question plus the possibility to ask add something more, but only 1 minute each, to Jerome from CIMA and to Tom Kelly from FAIRshare for one short intervention before we go to our poll and our wrap-up. Jerome, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Just a quick addition to what has just been said. I mean, never lose a good crisis. That is indeed something we must keep in mind, but not just to accelerate and jumpstart some of the policy initiatives and choices we're taking, but we definitely must take this as an opportunity to assess what happens in something as complex as our agri-food chain, and what are the different elements that are needed to work together so that we can deliver the food security to our citizens. So never lose a good crisis. I would use that also as a warning signal that when we launch initiatives like the upcoming Farm to Fork initiative, we must have a solid impact assessment if we're going to implement targets in there, or goals or initiatives, and without doing the full impact assessment of what it may mean for our food system in Europe. So never lose a good crisis. Yes, to push forward the initiatives that are needed, but also to take this as a warning signal that our systems might be a bit more fragile than we thought. And if we don't have the right impact assessment, we might have an issue.
Thank you very much, Jerome. Thank you very much. It's important to look at this perspective as well. I would like to finish this panel discussion with Tom Kelly, with the voice of the agricultural advisors, of the people who are helping our farmers to cope. Tom, can I give you 1 minute to wrap up and bring your feedback on what we discussed today? Is Tom Kelly on the call? Well, in that case, I suggest that we move to the poll. We have one last poll. Can we see it on the screen, Lorena? Perfect. As we said, this event is an invitation. It's an invitation for action. It's an invitation for action, and we ask you to contribute. We ask you to introduce us to people who can contribute, or we ask you to follow us and to see what others can bring on the table. So please take 1 minute to answer if you can directly, and if you are willing to directly contribute, or if you can introduce us with someone that can. I will keep only 1 minute before we wrap up. In the meantime, I would like to inform you that yes, all the presentations are going to be shared in our innovation portal, and this webinar was exactly recorded for the same purpose, to be shared in our portal. And let's see, what do we have? We see huge willingness for people either to contribute directly or to introduce us to someone that can contribute. We should not forget that all the people who can contribute, there is going to be an open call. We are working heavily on that because we had to pivot our activities. So there will be also additional funding from SmartAgriHubs to contribute. I think that we can close the poll. We do have a very good idea. So more than 70, actually exactly 75% of the people can either contribute directly or they can suggest. But I would suggest that our project has something for everybody, even for those who have no idea yet. Because in our innovation portal, we have a forum. There you can see what others can contribute with, and you can get the opportunity to exchange ideas with them. I think we're just in time. It's 12:30, and it's time to wrap up this discussion. I have no words to thank you for being here. At the peak of our time, we had 136 participants, 1 donkey and 1 dog. We talked about a lot of things. We even had connected people from Paraguay looking at us. I think that today we made the first step. We initiated the discussion. We're going to put some money on the table on the basis of our open call for that, but nothing will be valuable without your participation. So I would like to thank you all and invite you to stay tuned. All the questions will be delivered, all the presentations will be available to you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for attending.